So let's jump into our presentation with a project overview. First off, Sacramento 2040 is an important citywide project that involves updates to several of the city's key long-range planning documents. First, the general plan. State law mandates that all cities and counties in California adopt a general plan, which serves as the constitution for urban development and preservation in the city. The Sacramento General Plan lays out the city's long-term 20-year vision and includes text and diagrams and maps to communicate how that vision will be implemented. The plan expresses how the community should develop over time and specifies locations for various land uses, transportation improvements, new parks and open spaces, and other public infrastructure. It guides urban development within the city limit, including development on both privately owned lands and publicly owned lands. And it's used as the basis for land use decisions by government officials, such as the Planning and Design Commission and the City Council. The draft general plan also includes specific policies for 10 community plan areas of the city, and it addresses 5 special study areas that are outside of but adjacent to the city limits. Next, the climate action plan is the second component. It's an accompanying document that complements the general plan, and it includes a greenhouse gas inventory detailing how Sacramento's greenhouse gases are created. It includes a vulnerability assessment that uses data to identify and analyze the projected effects of climate change, with a special consideration on the projected impacts on the most vulnerable members of the population. It also includes mitigations and actions to reduce GHG emissions and strategies for adapting to the projected impacts of climate change. And it outlines a path to achieve carbon neutrality by 2045. And the third component is a master environmental impact report. Under the California Environmental Quality Act, adopting a general plan or climate action plan requires environmental review. And to satisfy this requirement, a master environmental impact report will be prepared to evaluate the potential environmental impacts of both the 2040 general plan and the climate action and adaptation plan. When the draft master EIR is released, there will be a 45-day public comment period. And then public comment is also welcomed, again, when the final EIR is considered at public hearings before city decision makers. So why update the plans? Well, today, Sacramento is one of the fastest growing cities in California, projected to have 77,000 new jobs and demand for 69,000 new housing units by 2040. Sacramento has an existing general plan. It was adopted in 2015. But the plan here we're discussing tonight is an update to that plan that addresses Sacramento's emerging issues and guides development through 2040. We'll dive deeper into the details of the CAP and the general plan later. But first, I'd like to talk a little bit about the process for developing the draft general plan and the CAP. This project kicked off back in February of 2019 with phase 1, issue and opportunity identification. In this phase, we did an analysis of existing conditions and extensive community outreach to understand Sacramento's vision for the future of their city. Then in phase 2, we developed a draft land use map and key strategies, again, with extensive community involvement. And in phase 3, we took those ideas and turned them into fully formed plans, including a preliminary CAP that was released in July of 2022 and a preliminary adaptation chapter of the CAP that was released in October of last year. And so now we're starting phase 4, final plan adoption. And a big focus of this phase is really confirming that the plans achieve residents' goals set out in earlier phases of the project. And the self-guided workshop is our main tool for gathering that input, and it'll be open through August, at which point the team will make revisions to the plans based on community input and bring the documents to the City Council for hearings and adoption. So I'm going to give you a detailed look now at how to participate in the self-guided virtual workshop. First, for anyone who's just joining us now, this meeting is being simultaneously interpreted in Spanish and Mandarin Chinese. So use the Zoom control bar to either select interpretation or language interpretation. Select the language you'd like to listen to, and you should start hearing the live interpretation in your selected language instead of English. If you want to listen in English, there's no need to do any of this or click on anything. So to get started, you need to visit the project webpage, which is www.sac2040gpu.org. And then click on the Enter Self-Guided Online Workshop icon at the top of the screen. You can watch the introductory video and then click one of the stations. You can go through these stations in any order, skip around, or just focus on the topics that are most of interest to you. You can spend as little as 10 minutes in this workshop and still be able to provide useful feedback for us. Or you could probably spend a lot more time if you really wanted to dig in deep to the policies and the context and the detailed maps. You're welcome to do different stations on different days at different times. There's no need to do it all at once. It'll be open and available for public comment through the end of August. So each of the stations contains one or two summary boards that describes the content, the goals, and the key moves of that element or chapter. And at the end of the station, there's a space to submit a comment. Each of these stations is also available in both Spanish and Chinese. Each station also has a link to the full chapter or element. If you want to dig into the details of the plans, you can click on that link and read the full plan sections and comment anywhere on the pages. I'll walk you through how to do that in just a moment. Unfortunately, the full general plan and CAP are not available in Spanish and Chinese. So let's see how it works. I'm going to move over to a web page and give you a live demo. Can everyone see that? So this is the Sacramento 2040 general plan page, and here's an icon to enter the self-guided online workshop. Clicking on that, take you to the landing page. You can see here, you can click here to watch the introductory video, and then you can scroll down and pick a station to look at. And I'm going to select economic development, which is station 4. So click that and it opens. And here I am on station 4. If you want the Spanish or the Chinese version, you can click here. Otherwise, I'll scroll down to the English content, which you can see here. There are also directions written out at the top for zooming in and out. I can read the key content, the goals, scroll down and see some of those key moves related to this chapter. I can zoom in and out using these buttons. And when I'm ready, I can click here and respond to the question. And type in my response. And when I'm ready, submit. And if I want to read the whole element, I can go over here and I can click and it'll open again in a new window. And here's the full element. I can scroll through and read it and drop a comment anywhere I'd like. Drop a comment. I can click here, the pop-up box will pop up. I can type in my name, my email, my comment, and then click agree and add the comment. You'll also be able to see other community members' comments as they appear, and you can respond to them. They'll appear as little blue circles in the document. So participating through this platform should hopefully be easy and intuitive. But if you have any difficulties, you can reach out to us by email at any time. One of our facilitators will drop the email address in the chat now, and you can we'll also put it up on screen at the end of this presentation. So moving back to the presentation now. Participating by phone will be very similar with similar buttons and similar functionality. So you can see the same language Zoom and comment icons from the screen I just had shared. Again, this workshop will be open through August, but we encourage you to participate now, get your comments in while you're thinking of it. So I'm going to pause there. We'll take a short break for any clarifying questions on how to use the tool. You can type your questions into the Zoom chat and our facilitators will read them out loud so we can respond. And as a reminder, later in the evening, we're going to have a longer Q&A session for content of the plan.
Tyler said it's a very interactive tool. It is. You can see other people's comments. You can like their comments. You can interact with them. And make sure you share it with your friends. And it's going to be open through the end of August as well. Dawn asked, is there any kind of index function to go right to specific aspects?
That's an interesting question. I mean, we have tried to create these different stations that correspond to the different chapters and elements of the plan. So that's one way you can do it. And in a moment, when I go over the content of the plan, I was going to touch on this, but since you asked, I might highlight it now. In chapter 1 of the plan, we've created a policy index that's organized by key topics. So if you're particularly interested in all the policies in the general plan related to youth, they're all listed in that appendix because youth is a topic that's addressed in multiple elements or chapters of the plan. So that is not hyperlinked per se, but it is a tool that's available to you. You could use that. It's in chapter 1. You can use that policy index to help find content on specific topics. And so that might help you. Great. Well, thanks for that question. And again, as a reminder, at the end of this session, we're going to have a larger Q&A on topics related to the content of the plan. So now let's talk about how the plan works. And let me start by talking about the overall structure of the general plan and then the climate action and adaptation plan. So the general plan contains 4 main sections. Part 1 covers the introduction and a chapter on sustainability and equity. Part 2 is the citywide goals and policies. Part 3 has the community plans and the special study areas. And part 4 is about implementation and administration of the plan. There are also 3 appendices: the vision and guiding principles, a glossary that covers terms throughout the plan, can be very helpful for some of the more technical language, and then photo credits. So 2 overarching themes that really emerged from the process were sustainability and equity. Sacramento is one of the fastest growing big cities in California, poised to see significant growth in coming decades. And it's really critical for the community that this growth happen in ways that are both sustainable and equitable. The sustainability and equity chapter presents these key themes to frame the 2040 general plan, and it introduces a set of indicators that will be used to monitor progress towards achieving these key community objectives. For each indicator, there's a baseline metric provided along with a future target that can be used to measure progress. The indicators cover items like commute mode share, tree canopy coverage, number of public electric vehicle chargers, and the share of residents spending more than 30% of their income on housing. Additionally, this chapter has the policy index that I just mentioned to help users navigate the plan more easily. The policies are organized by topic. So if you're particularly interested in a particular topic like walkability or policies related to youth, you can look in the index and see all of those related policies under that topic. Part 2 of the general plan contains the 8 elements that correspond to the legal requirements and local preferences. And so they include land use and placemaking, historic and cultural resources, economic development, environmental resources and constraints, environmental justice, mobility, parks, facilities and safety, and youth, parks, recreation, and open space. These elements contain goals, policies, and actions intended to help achieve the vision and implement the guiding principles for the general plan. So to keep this overview short and maximize time for questions, I'm just going to highlight a few policy topics from each of the elements, but we encourage you to read more about them in detail in both the summaries provided in the self-guided online workshops, and by diving into the actual content of the plan that's also posted to the platform. So in land use and placemaking, one of the key ideas is expanding the range of housing types throughout the city. This is a concept that's previously been approved by the City Council as one of the plan's key strategies, and now policies are written in order to implement this idea. Other important ideas in the land use and placemaking element include prohibiting new gas stations and limiting expansions of them, of existing gas stations, unless level 3 electric vehicle charging stations are provided, and prohibiting new drive-through stations within a quarter mile of high-frequency transit stops. The land use and placemaking element also has the land use diagram and a maximum floor area ratio map that together determine the uses and the intensity of development that can be built on any given parcel throughout Sacramento. You can see in the land use diagram on the left here that most of the city is yellow, which is neighborhood. And the neighborhood designation allows for housing and limited neighborhood-oriented services or public uses. Downtown and along certain key corridors, you see a lot of the salmon color, which is residential mixed use. And this designation allows for housing, commercial, retail, public, and office uses. Similarly, on the maximum floor area ratio map, which controls the amount of building space that could be built on any given parcel, you'll see the lowest value shown in yellow in the neighborhoods throughout the city, with the darker reds corresponding to higher floor area ratios concentrated along the corridors and in the central city. Overall, 92% of the projected new growth in Sacramento is anticipated to be built in opportunity areas such as the central city, along key commercial corridors, and near transit. Infill development in these centers and corridors supports frequent, reliable transit service. The environmental resources and constraints policies and actions focus on responsible management of natural resources, from flora and fauna to rivers and the urban forest. Also, they focus on conservation of energy and water resources, collaborative action to address air pollution and build climate resilience. And this element also includes a suite of actions to help adapt to more severe heat events projected from climate change. The environmental justice element provides direction on increasing access to healthy food for residents in underserved neighborhoods, taking data-informed action to address pollution, developing neighborhood-level resilience plans, and prioritizing infrastructure investments to address inequities. Additionally, this element has a focus on increasing representation from underrepresented represented communities on city boards, commissions, and in city-sponsored activities and events. The mobility element focuses on equitable, sustainable, and safe mobility. An important focus of the policies in this element is on promoting walking, bicycling, and transit over automobile use, and on coordinating land use and mobility planning to support frequent, reliable transit. Policies in the youth, parks, recreation, and open space element focus on equitably increasing public park acreage using a standard of 5 acres of park per resident citywide, and a goal of 10-minute walking access from home for park or recreational open space for all residents. Additionally, a focus of this element is on developing a performance-based system for prioritizing parks and recreational investments. Part 3 of the general plan contains the 10 community plans, which supplement the citywide policies based on unique issues in each of these 10 areas. The 10 areas are shown on the map and listed here. They include Arden Arcade, the Central City, East Sacramento, Fruit Ridge Broadway, Greater Land Park, North Natomas, South Natomas, Pocket Greenhaven, South Area, and South Natomas. Part 4 contains an implementation table that describes and prioritizes the actions needed to implement various plan concepts and establishes timeframes and departmental responsibilities for each of the programs and actions. And then, as I mentioned, the general plan has 3 appendices. Appendix A is the adopted vision and guiding principles. Appendix B is that glossary and acronyms, and Appendix C is the photo credits. Moving now to the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. This document includes a greenhouse gas inventory, climate action targets, GHG reduction strategy, and GHG reduction measures and actions intended to implement that strategy. Sacramento's community-wide emissions for 2016 are depicted here. They were estimated to be almost 3.5 million metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. As you can see from this diagram, 57% of Sacramento's 2016 GHG emissions came from the transportation sector. Meanwhile, the building sector made up about 37% of overall emissions. These emissions come primarily from energy that is used within buildings for heating, air conditioning, lighting, and plug load. 4% of emissions are generated from waste, and about 1% come from pumping water and wastewater. So while 37% of Sacramento's GHG emissions come from the building sector, approximately 60% of the reductions projected by 2030 are expected to be achieved through SMUD's 2030 zero carbon plan and the electrification of new and existing buildings. Promoting infill development will also help support these measures. While approximately 57% of Sacramento's GHG emissions come from the transportation sector, approximately 27% of the projected GHG reductions by 2030 are expected to be achieved through the electrification of transportation, increased public and shared transit ridership, and through an increase in the percentage of trips taken by biking and walking. Approximately 5% of Sacramento's GHG emissions come from generated waste. Reducing organic waste disposals in landfills is projected to provide approximately 11% of Sacramento's GHG reductions by 2030, and reducing emissions from water utility and wastewater systems and increasing carbon sequestration from trees is projected to reduce Sacramento's GHG emissions by another 3%. In total, the 12 CAP GHG reduction measures will ensure that Sacramento meets its state mandated GHG reductions by 2030, and will put Sacramento on a path to carbon neutrality by 2045. The CAP also includes a climate change vulnerability assessment, which analyzes the projected effects of climate change on Sacramento over the course of the 21st century, with special consideration on the projected impacts on the most vulnerable members of the community. The vulnerability assessment considered key climate change effects, including temperature increase, changes in precipitation, increased wildfire and air quality impacts, and increased flooding. Sacramento is expected to experience a range of impacts, including increases in the number of extreme rain events per year, in the average number of heat waves per year, and the average number of extreme heat days per year. Those are days when the temperature reaches over 103.8 degrees Fahrenheit. So 6 primary adaptation goals have been identified. Each of these is supported by a suite of policies and actions that are identified in the general plan and the local hazard mitigation plan, as well as policies and actions specific to the CAP. The adaptation goals are listed here, and they involve strengthening city government capacity to reduce climate risks, creating built environments that reduce exposure to extreme heat, reducing the risk of damage to life, infrastructure, and property due to flooding, increasing awareness of and expanding community resources to address adverse health impacts of air pollution, increasing community resilience to prepare for climate impacts, and enhancing water supply diversification and prioritizing water use efficiency. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about how the Sacramento 2040 plan relates to other ongoing planning initiatives in Sacramento. So the general plan, other city plans, and the zoning ordinance differ in their level of scope and detail. And this pyramid illustrates the relationship between these three levels of planning. The general plan outlines a long-term vision for Sacramento's development through a series of broad policy statements. Other city plans and the city zoning ordinance, in turn, implement the general plan policies through more area-specific policies, through implementation measures, and more detailed development regulations and standards. State law requires that all city plans and zoning be consistent with the diagrams and policies in the general plan. Development must not only meet the specific requirements of adopted city plans and the zoning ordinance, but must also be consistent with the broader policies outlined in the general plan. The housing element is part of the general plan, but it's on a different state mandated timeline from the other parts of the general plan. It was developed and adopted back in 2021. The housing element includes goals and policies and programs to address housing production and affordability in Sacramento. Many of the policies in the land use and placemaking element of this draft general plan are meant to complement and reinforce the goals of the housing element, especially the goal of expanding the type of housing allowed throughout Sacramento's neighborhoods in order to expand access to housing that is affordable and desirable for a wider range of households. Many of you may have participated in other ongoing processes and planning efforts in Sacramento, like the Parks Plan, the Stockton Boulevard Plan, or the Urban Forest Plan. These fall under the umbrella of the general plan, and there's some of the ways that the general plan will be implemented. When the Parks Plan is updated, for example, it will take into account parks policies in the youth parks, recreation, and open space element of the general plan, and related policies in the community plans. These policies will guide where the Parks Plan locates new parks, how it approaches funding, and how it addresses maintenance. We're fortunate tonight to have city staff here representing many different departments who will be able to answer any questions you might have about the relationship of the general plan to these other parallel efforts. And so now maybe we'll open it up for questions, and I'll let Katie facilitate this section.
Absolutely. All right. So far we just have one question from Teresa, who's asking if this meeting is being recorded. Yes, this meeting is being recorded. The first two of our webinars are posted on the GPU webinar or on the GPU website that Amy just put in the link in the chat. So feel free to watch our last two. And then this meeting should be up there by probably Monday. Tuesday's the holiday, latest probably by Wednesday. So with that, I want to open it up to any questions that you all might have. This is a very unique opportunity. We have a lot of city staff here. We have about an hour that we're happy to sit on this call for if you all need it, but we would love to answer, have any questions you might have. I see that Ansel did raise his hand. I'm just going to see if we have anything else in the chat box before maybe we let Ansel unmute himself and ask a question, if that's okay, Andrew.
Hello. Yeah, thanks. Just gonna say hi here briefly. So my name is Ansel Lundberg. I live in Curtis Park, and I'm also part of House Sacramento. We're a pro-housing organization in the city, and we're excited about the general plan. Got some members on here, and we have been engaged on this for a couple of years. So I kind of, we are sharing some of our feedback. We're super supportive of the change to allow more housing types across the city. We'd like to see some modifications of that to make it easier to build more housing near transit. But I generally wanted to ask about kind of how you're gonna aggregate the feedback you receive through, these meetings and from the city council and from the virtual workshop. And, do you envision sort of a report on the whole summer's feedback and recommendations from that feedback, or just curious about what that might look like?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we will be summarizing everything. And I guess what I would say is two parts. We'll take on board all the feedback. We'll summarize the key themes. We'll sift through the input. And as a team, city staff and the consultants will actually create a revised version of the general plan and cap that responds to comments that we've heard from the public. And we're calling that a hearing draft. And so the feedback we get will inform this hearing draft, and that will go before first the Planning and Design Commission and then the City Council. In addition to that hearing draft, we will have, as you pointed out, like a summary document that summarizes everything that we've heard, and all of the individual comments received will also be an appendix to that document. So the idea is the decision makers will be able to read everything, in terms of comments that have been submitted, whether through the Conveo tool or at any of the different board and commission presentations, or even pop-up events that city staff will be doing over the period. So they'll have that summary document, and they'll see how that input has been incorporated into the hearing draft. And so all of that will be before them as they deliberate and make their decision.
Great. That's very helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Again, Matt Hurdle with the city's planning division. We are going to be stopping by the City Council on August 8th to speak to them about the general plan and get review and comment from the council members, as well as we'll be going back on August 15th to get review and comment on the climate action adaptation plan. What we'll do there as well is, because in June, we actually went to all the city's commissions, and for those there's quite a few of them, and they're all listed on our website. So about 8 of them we presented to various commissions, and we got feedback from the commissioners on various aspects of the general plan and the cap. And so what we'll do when we present to City Council, both on August 8th and August 15th, is we'll have a summary of those bullet points, some of that, the overview and high level things we heard from those commissioners, so that City Council members can be aware of that as we're moving through this process. But as Andrew talked about, once it closes, then we'll of course summarize and make revisions based on all the input that we received. So thanks.
Wonderful. Thanks, Matt. And thanks, Ansel, for the question. Have 2 more questions that just came in, or actually a question and a comment. The first is, how will this plan encourage or provide better city services regarding policing, cleaning up the parkway, and fixing the streets? Kind of leads into the development of some of these areas as well.
Yep, great question. So that topic is addressed in the public facilities and safety element. There's separate goals related to police and fire, but also utilities and services that they guide at a high level in the general plan. They provide direction, and then some of the actions in that element actually call for updates to specific master plans and strategic plans that govern fire and police. So those are sort of shorter range. Of course, the general plan is a long range document covering 20 years, so it has to be broad and overarching. But these master plans or strategic plans operate on maybe a shorter time frame, and they get into more details of how policing, for example, or fire safety, fire prevention is done. So hopefully that answers your question. I would encourage you to dive into the public facilities and safety element and see specifically. There's a lot of things about making use of new technology to optimize delivery of services and optimize the use of city resources, that type of policy direction. So yeah.
Wonderful. Dawn, I hope that answered your question. So Angela, I just want to let everyone know, Angela is joining us for the first time. She's here to support measures to address affordable housing, inclusionary zoning, impact fees permitting, affordable to low middle income individuals. So I just wanted to say welcome to Angela and thank you for joining us today. So again, with that, you can interact with us a few different ways. You can raise your hand, ask a question, ask it in through the chat box. Again, you'll have plenty of opportunities after this to go to our website and interact with us there, or email the team directly. But again, a great opportunity here to ask some city staff any questions that you might have about the plan. Yeah, Inga's asking us to review the use of the tool again, Andrew.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that could be a good review we had a lot of people that signed on late to this meeting today.
Got it. I'm going to do the, let me see, go here and do the live demo. I think that might be most helpful.
Yeah.
Just sort of start at the beginning. So Amy can maybe put the link in the chat again. The address is pretty easy to remember. It's SAC2040gpu.org. That's the project webpage that we've set up. So this is like kind of a one-stop portal for all things related to the 2040 Sacramento project. But right at the top left of the screen, there's this icon you can press to enter the self-guided workshop. So you do that, and it takes you to the landing page of this platform that we've set up as the primary way for collecting input on the plan. There's a video here that you can watch that gives you an overview of the project and the process in more detail than I provided today. But if you wanted to know how things came together and how the general plan is used and how it relates to other city initiatives, all of that's in this introductory video. Then when you're ready, you can scroll down to a number of different stations, and these stations correspond to different chapters or elements in the plan. So we've got everything from the introduction to that sustainability and equity station, the kind of framework station where you find those indicators I think the policies index is in the introduction. But then you've got different stations on the key topics. These are the required elements of the plan. So land use and placemaking, mobility. We were just talking about the public facilities and safety element. If you wanted to see the whole thing, you can click on any one of these stations. So I'm just going to choose economic development, for example. And we've got a station on economic development that opens up. There's some information on how to navigate. If you wanted to see the plan in Spanish or Chinese, you have that. You can see the content of the plan summarized in those languages. There's also tools you can use to drag and drop or to zoom in and zoom out. The boards that you see here immediately are summaries of the content. They go over what's included in this element or chapter, what are the key goals, and what are some of the big moves that this chapter is trying to accomplish. And you can comment, generally, if you have a comment on anything, you can comment, you can leave a comment here. Or if you really want to get into the nitty-gritty, you can click on this section, which will open up the actual chapter itself. And you can, this is word for word, everything that's in the economic development element of the general plan. You can scroll through, and at any point, for example, you have a comment about this policy on shared infrastructure, you can leave your specific comment or ask your specific question about specific content of the plan this way. And we ask that you add your name, your email, in case staff wants to get back to you about anything. And then you submit your comment, and your comment will pop up here. It'll show up as a blue icon so that other people who are reading the economic development can see what you've said, or you can see what other people have said, and you can give them a thumbs up if you agree with what they say, or start a dialogue in there. So it's a very interactive tool if you really wanted to dive into the details. Is that answering the question?
I think that was helpful. I'll let her know if she can let us know in the chat if we need to go back through anything else. And while we do that, Dawn had a great question. I don't know if it's a question, but more of a statement of like, can the city improve the skills of bike riders? A lot right now are really lousy and unsafe.
It's a great question. And I know we have Jennifer Donlan Wyatt here, and I wonder if
Yeah,
Jennifer.
thanks, Andrew. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
happy to take this one. So the city of Sacramento offers a free urban biking class that's every month by Zoom. So, and we advertise it pretty well, but not everybody follows Sacramento on our social media. So I encourage you to follow the city of Sacramento on social media so that other folks can learn about all the things that we offer. And I think we all can improve how we travel around in our city streets. Sacramento ranks as the worst city in California for traffic fatalities per capita. And so the thing that we actually focus on are not people biking and walking, but people who are driving, because those are the folks that are actually causing fatalities and serious injuries on our streets. And so I think what I'd love us to be able to do is really focus and center on the data and the work around the Vision Zero work that we're doing. Thanks, Andrew. Back to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I appreciate that. And with that, do you have anything else you wanted to add, Andrew?
No.
Okay, just wanted to be sure. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm gonna have Tyler, I'm gonna ask him to unmute. He's raised his hand, and you guys can raise your hand as part of the functions. That's how I can ask you to unmute. Hi, Tyler.
Hey, everybody. And yeah, I'll come on camera just because we are here in person to some degree. And I want to first start by saying thank you to Jennifer and her team. I live in Midtown on P Street, where I'm one of the growing number of people that actually do not choose to not have a car in Sacramento. And it's becoming easier because yesterday, beautiful neon green paint, sort of beautifully put down on P Street, and now there's a bike lane with protected parking cars, and Q Street's next, then the train station is next, and all these things are happening. So to see this plan for 2040 is great. The question I have is about being dynamic and leaving a comment, and for example, the person who just asked the question about educating bikers, where I would push back and say, well, let's also educate people who drive cars, right? So we all have different needs and wants, but also one thing I think would be really interesting is to sort of be dynamic in the sense of a comment to say, okay, this person A has left a comment, B, here's their stance, C, here's where they live in the fabric of this community, where if someone from another place that isn't necessarily invested in what we want in Midtown leaves a comment that is actually disproportionately negatively affecting the things that we want, which is bike lanes, which is protected streets and walkability and Vision Zero being finally implemented. It's not fair. And so it's it's just something that I would love to see of a heat map of the yeses and the nos, and sort of where that aggregation of a statistical analysis would be. And yeah, what I would love to see as well is I noticed, so full disclosure, I'm trying to download the document. It's 521 pages. So it's still loading. And so one of the slides though was really interesting because it showed the building electrification emissions at 57%. And then it showed the reduction, I forget the exact percentage, but then transportation emissions was 23%. However, as we know, Sacramento has actually a disproportionate amount of transportation emissions coming from vehicles mostly. And so it's something that I'm thinking about where, as I mentioned, I live in Midtown. When I ride my bike down T Street, I am now doing a daily just EV quota count. And this morning, I counted 45 vehicles that are just parked on the street. And it's really interesting where it's those could potentially by 2040 be charging or discharging, exporting or importing electricity back to the grid on a revenue generator where the city of Sacramento could partner with somebody to get some extra income. But also it's a citizen, a resident living in Midtown or the general downtown area would be oh, I can now buy an EV because there is going to be charging and I live in an apartment, don't have a garage, don't have a driveway. So those are the comments that I'm going to be putting, but I just wanted to bring that to y'all to see sort of how the city is is there a specific section that I should be looking at for, I did see the contents, there is the EV section, but more of these more creative aspects of hey, we're not doing this yet, but we should be, or we can be.
So I think there's a couple of questions in there, and I can
couple of questions. Yeah, sorry about that.
let me sort of take them one at a time. I wanted to address your initial comment about sort of locating, commenters. And that's something actually in earlier phases, we did that. We had, when people made a comment, they left their zip code, and we were able to sort of aggregate the comments by area of the city. And it was really interesting to see, how people in different areas of the city felt the same or differently about different issues. Right now, the Coveo tool isn't set up with a zip code, but I wonder, Katie, is it possible to add that? We could sort of look into it to see, I was showing you, you add your email and your name. Maybe we could add another field for zip code or something like that, and to get at your question for the sort of the location of comments, to get a sense of whether people feel the same in different in the same areas of in different areas of the city or differently, or where the nuances might be. So that's something we can totally look into.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I'll just add to that as well, Andrew. One way to provide comments and see where input's coming on geographic specific issues or opportunities would be in your community plan as well. And so there's 10 community plans that are 10 parts of the city. And so there may be an opportunity to speak specifically to the community plan in which you reside, and also see the comments that are coming in on those community plans.
Yeah. And then I think I'm going to take them out of order because I think the third one is sort of related to the second one, but you were asking about sort of about electrification. And I wanted to point out that in the mobility element, there's a whole goal around electrification of transportation. And so there's a suite of policies and actions related to electrifying transportation and EV readiness in the mobility element. So you could certainly look there. And then I think picking up on what Matt said, I guess I would reemphasize that section 2 of the general plan, which is those 8 elements, there's citywide policies that apply, across all neighborhoods and districts in Sacramento. But then there's also these 10 community area plans that have area specific, actions and programs. And so the community plans complement what's in the citywide section 2 with something more specific for a specific local issue. And so there's some things around TOD, around some of the specific stops that are in some of the community plans that you might want to pick up on as well. And then Vic, I don't know if I saw you pop up there. I don't know if you wanted to talk more about electrification and the emphasis on how the transportation sector is picked up in the CAP.
Yeah, just to note that, so EV adoption is certainly the primary pathway to mitigating greenhouse gas emissions in Sacramento. So we're really looking at that, providing the bulk of emission reductions from our transportation sector. And I did want to just also note your question about the EV to grid question is one that is really at the leading edge right now. And so we're definitely tracking that. Tracking what's happening through state legislation and technology development. And it's something that if you have input, please, look at chapter 6 of the CAP. We'd welcome your thoughts. And we recognize that as a leading edge and really an opportunity area that is going to evolve over the coming years. And so we're trying to stay at the leading edge of that and pick up the latest and greatest. But we understand there's going to be a lot of movement over the next few years in that sector.
Yeah, for sure. And vehicle to grid is definitely something in addition to sort of like a pedestal on a curbside where, next week, for example, SB 233, Nancy Skinner has a bidirectionality bill that already has gone through the Senate. Now it's going through the Assembly. But I'm just thinking like basic pedestal curbside where Sacramento is super unique because we have this gray area, which is called a grasscape or a parking strip or a green strip, a green belt. And we have these beautiful trees in them. And we also have gardens. We also have some that just don't have anything. It's just dry dirt, or some have had cement pavers or even bricks where, it's like, figuring out a neighborhood or a homeowner or an apartment complex that might want to raise their hand. And so, yeah, I've got some ideas. So I'm going to populate them there. Or is there another idea portal or place where it's like, hey, these are comments, but also this is an idea from somebody that might be going somewhere else, or should I just leave a comment section?
Yeah, comments are great. I think we try to set up this tool as the one-stop portal for everything. If you want to ask a question, you want to create a comment. If you can locate it specifically, if it's specifically about like transportation electrification, you want to put it in that section of the mobility element. That's super helpful. But also, if you have just a general comment on those boards, there's a general comment space. So you decide where it fits best, but all of it will get picked up.
Okay. And then I don't want to take up too much air. I do have one more quick one. It's the waterfront and the river. Where could I find that within this? Because I definitely want to leave a bunch of comments because I see West Sacramento doing a great job. And I'm like, hey, I saw like this beautiful rendering back in like 2020 of where Old Sac was going to be completely redeveloped. And I kind of can't find that anymore. And it's something that I think hopefully can come back to the front and center.
I think where you'd want to see that is in the land use and placemaking element. I think it might be goal 8 or so, sort of later in the 8 of 11. But there's sort of a section of goals and policies around placemaking and urban form, and I think that's where you're going to find what you're looking for. The riverfront is also addressed in other elements, but probably more on the lines of recreation or open space preservation. So you could also find it in other sections of the plan. But I think what you're probably looking for is in the land use and placemaking element.
Okay, thanks for the guidance. Appreciate it.
Thanks for your questions, Tyler. I really appreciate it. We got 2 more questions, and then Dawn, I do see your hand raised. I'll get to you in just a second. Latanya asked, how are our citizens finding out about the general plan, accessing the information? Is there advertising, promotion being done for the plan and the details? Yes, there is. It's been an ongoing effort. The city has put out over 50 lawn signs in specific areas. They've been doing, I know Remy's just going to pop up. He's going to talk about the pop-ups that they're taking this plan into the community. They're also taking it into all of the commissions. We have been doing posted social media ads, trying to get as many eyes as possible onto these workshops as possible so that we can get people into the plan. And then finally is what we've been calling and connecting with CBOs and local organizations to help them post on their social media, share in their newsletters, get into council newsletters. And then Remy will jump in and let you know where they're going to be here in the next month or 2 to find the plan.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. And if you have any suggestions or recommendations, we're open to that too, to help us get the word out. As Katie mentioned, we have a concerted effort through social media and email blasts and announcements. We also have done some radio commercials on NPR, articles in the Business Journal. We've been holding presentations at boards and commissions. And then also, we know how busy everybody is. I know how hard it is sometimes to come to City Hall. So we're going out where the community is located, at events and gathering places where the community is gathering, particularly with our underserved communities in order to reach our hard-to-reach groups. So we're going to pop-up events, festivals, farmers markets, such as Celebrate Oak Park, Filipino Fiesta, and other farmers markets in the South area, in Natomas. And we'll continue to do so throughout the summer, but would welcome any suggestions or recommendations from the community as well. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, Remy. Teresa had asked, this too is her first meeting. Welcome. She's a vocational counselor for the Department of Rehabilitation. She wants to learn about what's occurring with the sustainable measures. She assists individuals pursuing careers within the green sector, and they help people through training to be prepared for jobs in the sector. With everything that's occurring in the market is large, is there a section within this plan that discusses employment, and where can she locate it?
Yes, great question. So the economic development element is where you want to look for that. There's a whole goal and a suite of policies and actions around workforce development. I guess I would also say the city's economic development strategy does prioritize certain areas. One of them is clean and green technology. So that's identified as a sector to grow and develop. And then that's also in the economic development element. But then there's also specific things around workforce development. So we love your input on that. It sounds like you have some particular expertise and knowledge in the areas. So take a look at these overarching policies we have related to those topics and let us know what you think.
Great. And Dawn, was this your question? What's a special study area? What's a special study area? And
so it is an area, there's 5 of them. They're not in the city currently, they're adjacent to the city. So they're areas where the city may provide some level of public service, whether it's water, utilities, or even police and fire. And so the city has an interest in them. And so they're part of the planning area. They are in part 3 of the general plan. There's a map of the special study areas, and there's a write-up about each of those areas, what the boundaries are, what's included, why it's of interest to the city, and that kind of thing. So that's a special study area.
Wonderful. I'm just putting in the chat. Yes, Teresa, you can find all of the pop-up schedules and where exactly they're going to be at the main website, sac2040gpu.org. Also, they're listing all the commission meetings. That's where you can find the recording of this meeting. It's kind of like the hub for all things GPU plan is the website. Right, Vic? Or right, Remy? I saw you come in.
Yes, that's correct. And Amy has dropped in the chat a list of past meetings and upcoming events as well. So a great source of information right in the chat if you're interested.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, again, we encourage you all to share the website with your friends. Again, the webinar is going to be open through at least the end of August. So we encourage you all to get your comments in. Let us know how best that we can help support you. So again, if there's any other questions, feel free to raise your hand or put them in the chat box. We're here to answer. But again, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Again, we had over 100 people sign up for this meeting, which means over 100 people made it to our website, read about the plan, and signed up and are engaging with us. This is our third webinar that we have had. And I think we've had a great subsection of the community that has came in and asked a lot of questions. And so again, I just want to say thank you all for taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us for this important update here tonight. But again, if there's no other questions, I'll definitely get you some time back on your busy schedules. But if anyone else has any other questions, any thoughts, or wants us to go through anything, again, we're available until 7 o'clock if you need it. But with that, I think that ends really our presentation and meeting if there isn't any other questions.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Tyler. I appreciate it. And
Thanks,
again,
everyone.
reach out to us if you have any questions. Again, we put the email address in the chat box. You can find everything on the website. But we look forward to seeing your comments.